Time now for a look at the latest business news. And the US has hit Huawei with an array of criminal charges for violating Iran sanctions and stealing trade secrets. To tell us more about that, Yuka Royer joined us now in studio. Yuka, a number of charges levied against the chief finance officer.
Well, 23 criminal charges in all, Eve, including conspiracy, fraud and obstruction of justice. The US Justice Department accuses Huawei and its chief financial officer, Meng Wanzhou, of lying about the business of its subsidiary to circumvent US sanctions on Iran. Separately, it also charged the telecoms company with stealing robotic technology from its US rival T-Mobile. Let's take a listen to the announcement by Matthew Whitaker, the acting US Attorney General.
In an effort to build their own robot, Huawei's engineers allegedly violated confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements with T-Mobile by secretly taking photos of the robot, measuring it, and even stealing a piece of it.
Well, Huawei has issued a statement denying the charges and stressing that the dispute with T-Mobile was settled in 2017. China's government, meanwhile, says the US charges amount to unreasonable suppression of Chinese companies and urged Washington to drop the arrest warrant for Meng Wanzhou, who's currently on bail in Canada. Beijing also called on countries around the world to provide a fair environment for Chinese firms as they push ahead with the development of the next generation of 5G mobile networks.
With no evidence, the United States is using its state power to discredit and attack designated companies. This sort of behavior is unfair and immoral. We are continuing to move forward with our 5G service. I think that China's 5G service can, along with companies from different countries, jointly push for a 5G smartphone for people around the world.
Well, for more on this, we can now cross to Beijing to speak with our correspondent, Charles Pellegrin. Now, Charles, the latest move comes as the Trump administration has already been urging allies to block Huawei and other Chinese firms from taking part in the development of the next generation mobile networks. Now, how could the indictment affect the world's second largest smartphone maker and the race to build the 5G infrastructure?
Well, indeed, it's not necessarily these two indictments that will have an effect on Huawei, because actually Huawei isn't that present on the United States market. This is because it comes in the context of a wider sort of campaign from the U.S. government to thwart Huawei's rise. Indeed, the American government has reason to believe that Huawei poses a national security risk, and that it is also trying to advance Beijing's global ambition. So what we're seeing around the world now is a battleground for these 5G networks, so the next generation of wireless networks, which will bring internet at much faster speeds and which will be also used in terms of artificial intelligence and automation. Well, the United States is trying to convince countries around the world not to trust Huawei with the manufacturing and with the upgrade to that new network. And some countries have followed suit, including New Zealand and Australia, in restricting Huawei's access to their market. And we're seeing other areas and other countries that used to be more friendly to Huawei suddenly appear to be more cautious. Countries like Malaysia or countries in Europe as well, where Huawei had made quite a few advances. So that will have an effect possibly on Huawei's bottom line. And if there's also one other indicator here that could be interesting to note is the fact that the Shenzhen Stock Exchange this Tuesday morning, which is the tech hub here in China, actually plunged on the news of those indictments in the U.S.
So the US voicing strong concern over the 5G technology and what's behind Huawei's development. But in the meantime, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said that the charges were wholly separate from the trade negotiations. Yet this comes as high-level negotiations are kicking off again with the Chinese Vice Premier Liu He just arriving in Washington today. Could the indictment have thrown cold water over the talks even before they started?
Well, both sides continue to say on the record that they are optimistic about the outcome of these talks, and they think they can work it out. But and as you explained, the Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross explained that these separate issues were separate, but there's a number of things that point to the point otherwise. Indeed, Wilbur Ross, the Commerce Secretary, as well as the Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, were both present at the announcement of those indictments on Monday in the United States, which tends to show that this is possibly just wider than just the U.S. Justice Department. In addition to that, as well, there was one comment by President Donald Trump himself late in 2018, where he explained and he suggested to journalists that he would be willing to use the arrest and the extradition order of Meng Wanzhou, Huawei's chief financial officer that is currently under house arrest in Canada, to use her arrest and her extradition order as a bargaining chip in negotiations. So this will actually, I think, make negotiations quite hard, because it's a very tough stance that's been taken by the U.S. at a time when both countries are actually really seeking to find some sort of deal, because China is facing an economic slowdown, and the United States isn't doing great either, especially after such a long government shutdown.
Well, Charles, thank you very much for your analysis. Charles Pellegrin reporting from Beijing. Now, the latest legal development has upset the market, as Charles just mentioned. Chinese shares stumbled in early trading, though they recovered slightly in the afternoon. As you can see, quite a mixed picture here, with Tokyo's Nikkei closing just above the flat line. Moving on, Apple is set to issue a software patch later this week to fix a major security flaw. A bug in its FaceTime video calling app lets iPhone users hear audio from the people they're calling before they even pick up the phone. The bug appears to affect the group video calling feature in the app, which was launched only last year. And that wraps up the business news for now.
Thanks a lot, Yuka, for that. Yuka Royer there with our business update.